Hi guys, Lindsay Ward here, your trusted PT, Pilates instructor and yoga teacher, and today I am discussing the lowdown on protein. I've enlisted the beautiful Georgia Betts, who is a qualified and holistic nutritionist, to give us all the goods on protein, why we need it, where you should get it from, and which protein powder fared best from the three that we compared. But before we get in there, I must say that any topics and information discussed in this video are completely general in nature. If you are looking for more information on your own personalized needs or dietary supplementation, it's really important that you consult with your own medical practitioner or qualified individual of choice. This video is absolutely not sponsored or affiliated with any brands or promotions. They are just brands that I am often asked about. Now, with all that, let's jump into the video and get into the good stuff.
All right, guys, so today I have teamed up with the beautiful Georgia Betts, who is a qualified nutritionist, to ask about protein. So I actually gave her, because this is a question I get a lot, I wanted to know which was the best protein powder if you're choosing to get one, and why it's so important to have protein, because I'm always harping on to you guys about it. So I thought that it was best to go to the best source I know, which is Georgia. So I might introduce her now. She can just give you a little bit of background about herself, and then we can go through just a few questions that I've got so that you guys can get the best information to make the best decision in regards to what protein sources you want to choose. So I'll hand it over to the lovely Georgia. If you want to just give us a bit of background about yourself.
Hello, my name is obviously Georgia. I am a clinical and holistic nutritionist. So I work in clinic, usually seeing clients one-on-one. I specialize in gut health, female hormones, and mental health. They're kind of my three main things. But then I do a lot on the side, obviously with holistic weight loss and general health and well-being type stuff as well.
That's where sometimes when I need to answer a hairy question from you guys, often I might be texting Georgia in the background to be like, hey, hypothetically, if this was happening. So if you guys ever have any questions, you can reach out to Georgia on her Instagram, and I'll pop it up into this video. If you guys ever want to get in contact with her, she has a great source of information on there. And likewise, if you do want any further information, so obviously I'm not a qualified nutritionist, so the info that I give you is quite broad and they are always guidelines. So if you want personalized advice, and I've done this myself with Georgia, and it's really, really beneficial if you want to get into just nitty-gritty issues that you think that you're having, it's such a good idea to book in a one-to-one consultation, because you will find out so much interesting stuff about yourself. Because we know there's so much information out there, but without asking the right questions and without the right background knowledge, you can only go so far. So I'll give you all of Georgia's details at the end of this, and also pop up her social media handles, because it is definitely worth a follow. I know there was just a post that went up about thyroid, which was super interesting, and a lot of my clients were like, this makes a lot of sense. So definitely worth a follow there. So Gio, would you be able to run through? So I'm always talking
From your perspective, the importance of protein.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we think of protein, we're usually just thinking of like muscle building or muscle repair, which of course protein is super important for muscle repair. But protein probably to me is one of the most important macronutrients, because protein, as it's broken down forms, contains or is made up of amino acids. And these amino acids are essentially the building block for everything in our body. So whether that comes to hair, skin, nails, our gut lining, even our neurotransmitters, so our feel good and our happy hormones, all the hormones that we need to help with sleep, they're all made up of amino acids. Amino acids are also essential for different processes within the body, so liver detoxification and supporting, so liver detoxification of hormones and toxins as well. So yeah, protein is really important. And if we are going through any kind of repair work, so whether that be any kind of healing or repair, so obviously if we're training a little bit more, Postpartum, we need obviously our protein requirements will change. If we do have any gut issues or anything like that, we always want to start off looking at protein intake.
Somebody had a fairly good diet, but they were really low on their protein intake. Would it be fair enough to sort of suggest that that's going to hinder either their progress or definitely a lot of other stuff that's going on in the body? If you say, for example, if they weren't getting enough protein, would that cause like an interrupted sleep and it would maybe affect like their ability to train? So there's like a domino effect.
Yeah, absolutely. So protein also helps control our hunger hormones as well, so ghrelin and leptin. So if we're not getting enough if we're not getting enough protein, that's going to be kind of disrupted. So that alone kind of will be affected from the hunger side of things. But then just from a general, feel good nervous system point of view as well, and the way that we're feeling. Obviously, we have neurotransmitters like GABA and dopamine. And dopamine is usually associated with that response that we have when we crave something. So low levels of dopamine can be associated with more sugar cravings or more different food cravings. So adding more protein to your diet can sometimes really help with regulating those kind of hormones.
Super interesting that you say that, because what I find when people are on the program, it's usually around 30 to 40 days if they've managed to sort of be quite consistent with choosing whole foods and increase. I always find it's usually increasing protein intake. We'll get into people that maybe have a little bit too much protein in a sec. When clients are sending me their food, it's often higher in like quite starchy refined carbohydrates, low in your whole foods and quite low in proteins. It's interesting, after like 30 to 40 days, people often tell me, oh, I just don't feel like sweet food in the afternoon anymore when they go through that lull, or they're not really the same. It's like their taste buds probably have changed over, but they might not be having the same responses, which I didn't realize was potentially because of what you just ran through then. So that is super interesting. Is there such a thing as maybe too much protein? So if they have a target of protein to hit, there's obviously danger with going super high on that end, but is there any repercussions towards their progress in terms of weight loss if they go over their protein by like only just a small amount?
I think going over your protein by a small amount won't be overly detrimental. There's definitely worse things that we can be doing. But if it's consistently going too far over your protein recommendations or requirements, then that can have adverse effects on like your kidneys and your liver as well. So we do kind of need to find that sweet point. But generally speaking, often people that are training or there's higher levels of stress, even if that's like physical or mental stress, we do need to have higher protein requirements. And a lot of the time these days, I find it's more common for people not to be eating enough protein than eating too much protein. However, with saying that, definitely too much of anything is never a good thing either.
I often say that to clients. I was like, you actually do need to find and sort of understand your balance. The rough approximate I would give to my clients, because I know how often they're training, usually training quite intensely 4 to 5 days a week. I usually try and get them to go like 1.2 grams of protein for every kilogram that they weigh, roughly, would be the best sort of like approximate measure, do you think?
Yes. So for, a generally healthy person, I would definitely say what you recommended is perfect, 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight. If we were if there was kind of any kind of therapeutic condition that we were trying to manage, that protein requirement might be increased to anywhere between 1.2 to 2.
Okay.
So yeah, just really depending on case by case situation. But for a generally healthy person that's training, that's perfect.
While somebody might go and spend more money on protein, like whether it be protein powder or more protein sources, instead of just going to somebody that can actually maybe get the problem sort of under control in like 1 to 4 sessions, we would spend money like trying to solve the problem ourselves.
Yeah, and that's it. And it could be, and exactly what you said, like whatever's going on can be stemming from so many different things, and increasing your protein might not necessarily be the the golden answer. Other nutrients are super important too. So we still need to be having a macro balanced diet. So we need to be having complex carbohydrates are really important because they also help with liver function. They help with supporting our adrenal gland function. And then of course all the benefits that we get from the prebiotic fibers that are in complex carbohydrates to really support the diversity of your gut microbiome. So yeah, it definitely, whilst protein is a super important macronutrient, we do need to make sure that we're balancing it out and just obviously always thinking what's the best way to get in a diverse amount of plant-based foods first of all, and then also making sure that we're hitting our protein requirement.
This is sort of deviating from the protein talk a little bit, but when it comes to carbohydrates, they're often the ones that taste really good, like the ones that people tend to have more of, even though it might be coming from, say, like, breads, rice, pasta, cereals, they all have their place, don't get me wrong. I feel like people tend to have that first as their largest portion of the meal. They're filling up on that, which is quick release energy, really, not depending on where you're getting the source from. Then that's where the protein intake can become quite low because they've filled up on the other stuff.
So my favorite sources of complex carbohydrates are things like sweet potato, brown rice, basmati rice. Basmati rice is actually a low GI rice, so it means that it's got that sustained, stable release of sugar into the bloodstream. So it's kind of it's a slower on the gastric emptying. Then other sources, I really love quinoa because quinoa is not only a complex carbohydrate, but it still contains a little bit of fiber and a little bit of protein in it as well. And otherwise, when I do use pasta, I really like using buckwheat flour as a wheat alternative, which is a complex carbohydrate. It also contains a little bit more fiber and a little bit more other beneficial micronutrients as well.
So just jumping back into protein, what would be your best sources of protein?
Obviously, we've got your animal sources of protein. So beef, chicken, fish, poultry. Then we've got, and then also we often just think of like the meats and the fishes and things like that, but also things like, a good quality Greek yogurt that contains a fair amount of protein in it as well. Cottage cheese also contains a little bit of protein, if obviously you're not dairy intolerant or lactose intolerant. And then smaller amounts, we have things like our nuts and seeds and nut butters and all of those kinds of things as well. Then from more of a plant-based side of things, obviously the nuts and seeds fall into that category, but you've got your tempeh, tofu, and beans as well, so legumes. So chickpeas, lentils, kidney beans, all of those are a source of plant-based protein too.
Just touching on diversity, if somebody was favouring a more animal-based protein diet, is there a recommended amount of each type of animal-based protein they should have? Obviously, we know too much of anything is not a good thing, but if somebody is more likely to be having more red meat per week versus white meat, then maybe adding in something like a vegetarian source. What's your sort of recommendation, generally speaking, for people that want to get a lot of diversity in and they are having an animal-based diet?
I think, as I said, I probably would always, with anything in the diet, diversity is always best. My kind of general rule of thumb is always to make sure that you're getting good quality protein. So if you can, and if you have the means to, ideally, you want to look for your grass-fed organic meats. I know that these days in like Coles and Woolworths, you can get Cleaver's Meat Organics. They're a really good brand that I use if you are wanting to eat red meat. I would say, don't overdo it. So twice a week is fine for red meat consumption, and probably stick to, your 100-gram palm-sized portion.
That was my next question, because I know it's often easier or more tempting to have the foods that you like more of. Same sort of thing goes with the carbohydrates, right? People will fill up on their carbohydrates or their heavy proteins rather than on their like fruits, vegetables, cruciferous greens, that kind of thing. Does the portion size vary, say, from a red meat to a white meat, like a fish or a chicken?
So you can go a little bit higher in fish and chicken. So probably just over a palm size serving. So more so when we're talking about red meat, usually a serve is about 100 grams. I would say for white or for chicken, maybe 120 to 150 gram serve. And then for fish, probably the same as chicken. So anywhere between that 120 to 150 grams would be
Yeah.
a serving size. Yeah.
Would the only exception to that be something like a salmon? It's like a heavier, like fattier fish.
More so for your white
White fish.
fish, obviously
Yeah.
the calorie content is going to be lower in your white fish because they're generally less fatty, unless it's something like a barramundi where you've got the skin on and it's going to have more fats in it too. So yeah, just being mindful of those more heavier, fattier fishes with the skin on, then that's probably, yeah, you want to go back to that palm size serving if weight loss is something that you are trying to achieve.
I think people also don't realize that there are small amounts of proteins that are contained in a variety of vegetables. We often forget about them because it's so tempting to fill up on your proteins or your starchy carbohydrates because they're the ones that we find are tastier. But I'm always encouraging clients to fill up on greens at every single meal if you can, because you can't get enough of the extra vitamins and minerals that those vegetables provide. Fill up on those and then just make sure you're hitting your other targets. So if somebody wasn't hitting their protein target and they were to look at maybe introducing a protein powder, what would be the things that you would suggest they look for if they're searching for their own protein powder? Obviously, I've got you to look into 3 of the most popular ones I get asked about today, but what about others, or what should they be looking for?
So I personally think when it comes to choosing a protein powder, we need to be thinking about the reason why we're taking the protein powder in the first place. So if you already have a pretty macro balanced diet, you're not doing heavy resistant weight training every day, you're more doing yoga, Pilates, going for walks, then, and you're getting enough protein through the diet, you can afford to go for, one of those protein powders that don't contain around the 20 to 30 grams of protein, and which I'll talk about in a second, because 3 of them that we compared, one of those was a lower protein containing protein powder. Then the other things that we want to look for is making sure that they're not filled with like sweeteners and additives and things that can really disrupt our digestive system and cause irritation and inflammation within our digestive system. And then sometimes when we're looking at the plant-based proteins, which I personally really like, we want to make sure that they're coming from a diverse range of plants.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking at different kind of beans or peas or rice, a combination's usually better because then you're getting all of those. Each plant kind of offers a different amino acid profile, so you're getting in all of those essential amino acids. For example, I think there are protein powders out there on the market that are just hemp protein. For me, not my number one pick. Also something to be mindful of too that not a lot of people are aware of, but when we have something like a hemp-based protein and it's being grounded up, when it's exposed to air, it oxidizes and can also become rancid. So some plant-based proteins contain small amounts of hemp protein, which is fine, but I wouldn't just go for a completely hemp-based protein.
That is so interesting, because they are not the things that you read about when something starts trending. Hemp's obviously having a little bit of a moment right now. And I think that people can get stuck on the marketing or the fad of something without actually realizing that it might not be the best for them, or they could actually be completely wasting their money. It's like people that might read something online, choose to take a supplement from the supermarket without realizing that the bioavailability is really low, the quality is really low, instead of just spending the money on a practitioner and getting the proper advice, personalized advice, and also practitioner grade quality supplements.
Yeah, look, like anything, it's always best to kind of choose better quality, because usually the better quality supplements, protein powders, whatever it may be, contain like less fillers, less excipients. They contain more of the bioavailable forms of ingredients, so the things that are going to be more digestible and easy for our body to like kind of utilize. Yeah, so I guess it really does go down to quality, and then obviously your individual needs as well.
So I asked Georgia if she could very kindly do a comparison on three of the most popular proteins I get asked about. One is the Beauty Chef Beauty Blend, I think it is. I don't know if they market it as a protein, but it's like a beauty blend. The next one was a Prana on plant-based protein, and the third one was a Happy whey protein. It's like a milk-based protein. They're the ones that I often get asked about. There is another one, which is Tropico, which is huge following for being a clean protein, and it's got a big fitfluencer following, but it's not one that we compared today. So what were the main things that you sort of found out when you were doing your research?
All right, so I think I'll start with the Beauty Chef protein. It is a beautiful formulation because it contains lots of prebiotic fibers. So the prebiotic fibers are what is going to feed the healthy bacteria within our gut, as well as their specialized formulation of probiotics too. So you're getting kind of the prebiotics and the probiotics in that formulation. And overall, it contains 5.7 grams of fiber, which is incredible for a protein powder. It also contains a little bit of vitamin C, which is an antioxidant. It's good for immune function and our adrenal glands too. And vitamin D, which we know obviously is good for immune support, bone health, and hormone regulation. The types of protein that are in the Beauty Chef, it's a combination of sprouted, fermented, and rice protein, which is really nice because, as I said, when we're looking for a plant-based protein, it's kind of good to ensure that it's coming from a range of plants, which this one was. Although on their website, I couldn't find the amino acid breakdown, so I'm not entirely sure what amino acids were in higher amounts or if all of the essential amino acids were there. But I assume because they've used that combination of plants that all of the essential amino acids would be in there. And then it had no preservatives or no additives. It's also vegan friendly and certified organic. So it's a really wholesome, holistic, nice protein powder. The downsides of this one, though, it only does contain 13 grams of protein. So if you are someone that really is kind of, you're training quite hard, you might be doing some, a lot of weight sessions, or sometimes you're finding it difficult, you're busy, so you're finding it difficult to get protein in your diet, I probably would suggest for opting for a protein powder with more protein in it. 13 grams is great, particularly if you are getting it from other sources. But if you are lacking in protein, then the 13 grams probably isn't going to be enough. Another thing to note with this one is that it probably wouldn't be suitable for any of those following a FODMAP friendly diet because of those prebiotic fibers. So they might, cause a little bit of fermentation and irritation to the gut. The only other thing that I would probably say, I have tried this protein powder, but it was a long time ago. So I think I tried the chocolate one. Memory, it did taste okay, but Linz, I know you've tried this one before.
Yes, I have. I've tried so many proteins, but this is one of them. I did use this for a long period of time because the taste is actually really good. And unlike other plant-based proteins, this one blends really well. So you can just put it with, your milk of choice, and it's really quite creamy. A lot of the problems with other plant-based proteins is they're gritty or they have like a sand-like sort of taste, and there ends up being a bit of sort of like stuff that doesn't mix through, a bit of sediment and stuff at the bottom if you are mixing it into like just a protein shake. So this is what I do really love about this one, is it tastes good and has a great texture.
And I think it's also important to acknowledge the cost per value as well. So
absolutely,
in a perfect world, we would love to have all of these beautiful ingredients in all of our things that we're consuming. But I did find the price point of the Beauty Chef was quite high. So we're looking for a 500 gram container. It's $69. And when I was comparing the other proteins, the Prana was around the $35 mark. and the
Yeah.
Happy Whey was around the $46 mark.
Yeah, and because we're talking in terms of people that want to increase their protein intake, that does sit relatively high compared to the others. Perhaps if you were taking this product for other reasons because of the pre and probiotics or other ingredients that it contains, maybe that's going to be more of a benefit for you. But when we're solely talking about increasing your protein intake if you're not getting enough, this one definitely sits higher on the scale. I mean, things are generally more expensive for a reason. As you mentioned, these products usually have amazing, excellent quality ingredients, but if it's just for protein purposes, maybe it's just at that higher end. What about the Happy Whey? Now, this is a popular protein with, I want to call them fitfluencers. I think they have a great way of marketing this product. They have really, really great ambassadors. Ambassadors that I definitely trust, which is why I tried it, but it wasn't,
Yeah.
I didn't love it.
Yeah. So I guess the thing with this one is that it is a whey-based protein as opposed to the other plant-based proteins that we've been looking at. Typically, whey-based proteins do contain a fair amount of leucine and cysteine, which are essential for muscle growth and metabolism. And it does contain overall 21 grams of protein, which is fairly good. And that would be like a serving size of protein just by having a scoop of that. However, it isn't obviously plant-based. So if you're following a vegan or vegetarian diet, then you're going to be avoiding this one. And it's obviously too not suitable for those with dairy or lactose intolerance. And I do find that whey-based proteins can be a little bit aggravating and irritating on the digestive system as well. So they can have some of those adverse effects and kind of cause bloating and some other unwanted side effects too.
This is a little bit of a side question, and obviously everybody is different. We all contain different digestive enzymes that break down foods differently. But in your experience, would you say that dairy in general can be aggravating on the system, or does it really come down to the individual and the quantity consumed? Speaking in terms of like protein or just dairy in general.
To be honest, if I was to choose one or the other, so having like a dairy source or having a whey protein, I would probably say having small amounts of dairy is better because you're getting in all of the synergistic and nutrients in there. So you're getting the calcium and everything else that the dairy contains. However, I think having a whey-based protein over a long period of time, it is going to probably show up in other forms. So I know, from a clinical perspective, what I see in clinic often, it is sometimes one of those last things that people kind of change, particularly if somebody has, they've already got a kilo of whey-based protein and they come to me and they've got some digestive issues and then they've got some skin issues even. Often I will kind of be a little bit lenient sometimes and I'll be like, look, let's finish what you have. By the time they finish it and they actually go off the whey-based protein, that can kind of be like the missing link in the puzzle. So, I mean, whilst it is always individual, I do find that as a general rule of thumb, the whey-based is, quite irritating.
So if you're finding that you can tolerate it, it's actually not a bad protein powder to take in itself. Obviously being whey-based, and you mentioned there were those couple of ingredients that can be essential to muscle growth. So maybe there is sort of a place for it. And again, that's if this is if you're not hitting your protein markers, because nothing replaces a good whole food diet. Protein powders are not there to be used as meal replacements or supplements. Nothing is ever going to beat a whole food diet. I am somebody that takes protein powder and I eat a lot of whole foods, but I don't use it as a meal replacement. It is just something that I like to have in addition to because my life is busy. So it's more of a convenience based thing. Because I know with a lot of clients or if people are trying to control their weight or manage their weight, they think that having a protein shake should replace a meal. But then if you're just having that protein shake, you are missing things like fiber from your whole foods, plus a whole bunch of other vitamins and minerals that you can't possibly get out of a protein powder. So I'm always telling clients it's whole foods first, and then think about supplementation, whether it's a protein powder or supplements in general, second, because you want to make sure that you're building a strong foundation. But people always go to something that's easier. It's easier for them to be reminded to have a pill every day or have a protein shake every day, rather than for them to do a little bit of meal prep and get their food under control.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to get into the habit of relying on protein powder. But I think, as you said, when we're, a little bit pushed for time, or we do enjoy having something like a morning smoothie and we need to balance out those macronutrients, quick, easy, simple way, you can just put a scoop of protein powder. Often they taste quite nice as well. And,
Yes, I do.
I do know some people that put like raw eggs into their smoothies. And look, that's a whole food source of protein, but I don't know. And depending on where the eggs are coming from, if they're pasture raised or whatever it is, we can have a few issues with uncooked eggs. So protein powder is a good way of balancing out something like a smoothie if you're having that for breakfast.
Okay, cool. So the last one you looked at was the Prana On. Now, this is the one that I personally take, mainly because I have a really good handle on the rest of my diet. I eat lots and lots of whole foods, but I love the texture and the taste of this protein. So that's sort of why when people ask me for a recommendation, I often give them all three, because I want to know, are they taking it for convenience? Are they more concerned about taste, or are they more concerned about price point?
Yeah, well, actually, I've never tasted the Prana one, so I'm really pleased to know that it does taste good. They also have a few different flavors that are quite delicious,
Yes, they
because
do.
the ingredients and the formulations are quite good. So it is a formulation of golden pea, milled rice, and Fabian bean protein. So again, we've got that nice combination of the plant-based proteins to make up a complete amino acid profile, which they did show on their website. It was a complete amino acid profile, and it does overall contain 30 grams of protein. So out of the three proteins, it was the one that was highest in protein.
Yep.
So this is a really good one if you are busy, you are training. Then on top of that, it's also vegan friendly. It contains probiotics too, which is obviously great for gut health. And one of my favorite things about this protein is that it also contains digestive enzymes. Some people sometimes, if they're not getting enough protein in the diet, their stomach acid might not be as strong, because protein stimulates our stomach acid. Therefore, when we do have protein, because we need that stomach acid to break it down, we can kind of we can get full quickly or feel like heavy and sluggish after eating protein. So the digestive enzymes actually help to break down the protein in our digestive system, which is great.
That is wild. I had absolutely no idea that that's what digestive enzymes can do, and also that if you aren't getting enough protein, you aren't eating it regularly, that can actually lead to making you feel sluggish when you don't eat it, because as you know, I am all about how it feels rather than how something looks. So I'm really into making people understand how their body responds to certain foods, because that's really, really important. We often don't recognize that if we're overeating something, or if we're eating something that our body doesn't agree with, we don't actually take time to recognize, oh, that doesn't agree with me.
Yeah, definitely. So that's another reason why protein is important too. The fact that it does have that effect on our stomach acid. And usually signs of low stomach acid will be like getting full quickly after meals, just unexplained feeling sick or nauseous, and then also bloating as well.
Yeah.
That's all signs that potentially the stomach acid is not where it's supposed to be at. It also is great for people on plant-based diets, because it does contain a little bit of iron and zinc to kill micronutrients that are kind of lacking sometimes in a plant-based diet. The only disadvantages perhaps of this protein is that you just will want to be mindful of that. If somebody does have high levels of iron, any kind of extra iron, whether it even be in the smallest amount, can be quite inflammatory on the body if people have excess iron. But most commonly these days, people are low in iron anyway, it is quite rare to have high iron. Diagnosed medical conditions like hemochromatosis, we would want to be avoiding that protein powder. But I think for the general population, that's not really an issue.
It's so surprising to find out that there's a lot more to these protein powders than just being a supplement for not getting enough protein in your diet. And knowing that maybe sometimes it is best to get a professional opinion when you're deciding to supplement with protein powders or even with any other kind of supplements, to make sure that you're choosing the right one and that you're not just flying blind. I know that we've done a very general overall comparison here because I wanted people to know that maybe they should be looking into either getting professional advice or into the protein powder a little bit more than maybe just the one that they see on Instagram that their favorite influencer takes or whatnot. What would you say for somebody that's trying to put on weight or maybe even trying to put on muscle? Would you suggest that the whey protein, if they're not intolerant, is the better way to go? Or would you say stick with like a plant-based protein? What would be your general advice?
Same, I guess. Probably whey, as I said, it's naturally just got that higher amounts of the cysteine and the leucine in it that's really good for muscle repair and muscle building. And then I guess maybe looking at a protein, if it is for weight gain, then maybe looking at a protein that has a little bit more carbohydrates in it as well.
Yeah. Okay. That is super handy to know. Much like all of the other nuggets of wisdom you have dropped on us today, Georgia, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your knowledge and your time. And hopefully people have a better understanding of why protein is so important and essential in their diet, and maybe which direction they can start researching in to find out which protein supplementation or even how to include more whole foods into their diet might be right for them. Like anything that we have discussed today, the advice is general in nature. Please do seek one-to-one professional and personalized advice from your healthcare professional before beginning to supplement with anything that we have talked about today. And that person can be Georgia. If you want to reach out to her, please go and follow her on Instagram. She is always sharing amazing knowledge there as well. And if you have any health and fitness related questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I will always do my best to answer them, or at the very least point you in the right direction of somebody that can. All right, guys, I hope you've loved this talk. And if you have anything else that you would like me to research or discuss, please let me know, because I love making content that is for you. All right, go and get yourself some protein, go and get your whole foods, and I'm going to see you in the next chat another time.